Guard thy rule.
This is a California laurel.
Oh, goose. Yeah.
I don't see any flowers around right now, but people come here at seasons changes to see the flowers. Here's where we're coming up to one of my spots, because I like to see Mount Diablo. We have two sacred mountains in the Bay Area. Mount Diablo is right here, and Mount Tamalpais is over there. I'd like to read a few poems of Mount Diablo as a companion.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely, lovely and ancient and foxed, with rusty brown spots as the oldest immortal princess, or the Bodhisattva Kwannon as a simpering and infinitely generous old whore. How surprised we are at what passes in past and future for the scent of apples. I must know more about the skin and muscles and the wall of stars 2 billion light years long. It is all quick. When my poet friends and I started writing, poetry was dead. There was no poetry. It had been killed by lack love, it had been killed by the academies, it had been killed by scholasticism, it had been killed by teaching as poetry what was not poetry, by teaching pacifying doggerel and dribble to people as poetry when that was not poetry, never was poetry, never will be poetry. And we were very much determined to create real poetry, which was poetry that was both inspired and from the imagination. And it just so happened that when we first got together and gave our first poetry reading, we went from that moment to seeing that we were saying to the audience what in the United States in the 50s needed to be said. We had no idea that what we were going to say and that what we were saying in these poems that we were writing, poems about nature, poems against the system, we had no idea that there was an audience there that for whom we were actually just being the vocal cords. We were just simply speaking for them. They would just say, yeah.
Because you are part of a new generation that has changed the world forever. So in the words of Jimi Hendrix, I say, excuse me, while I kiss the sky. Shalom, peace, assalamu alaikum, namaste, thank you. It is my deep and honored pleasure to welcome two of the most interesting and exciting guys that I've ever known. Please give a very warm welcome for America's foremost poet, Mr. Michael McClure, and from the Doors, Mr. Ray Manzarek.
By 1965, some of us young artists and poets were sick to the teeth of the McCarthy hearings, of American conservatism, of the beginnings of the wars in Asia, of the mistreatment of racial persons, of the barriers against women, of the hypocrisy, of the despising of true art, and many of us joined together to speak out against it. In the 50s, in the cold, bitter, gray flannel suit, Buick 50s, draft board 50s, people were not aware of being creatures. They were, aware of being mammals. They were aware of being shoe clerks and bankers and the doings of puppeteers. In a very real sense, my poetry and my work as an artist was a provocation against those who felt that they were less than mammals, who felt they were shoe clerks and bankers and politicians and all of those things first before starting at a mammal basis. No trace of realization remains, and it goes on and on, endlessly. The great horned owls are gone, and the wind is here. Fog decorates the morning. The bronze bell rings through the branches while a green fig rolls down the hill by my foot. Incense makes dragons of luck. I imagine seeing through all the realms, and they are not there. Just little fungi looking like turkey tails and skid marks under azaleas. Dennis Hopper said, without McClure's roar, there wouldn't have been any 60s. By my roar, he's talking about my beast language poems, which are actually poems partly in English and partly in an invented language, in which there is a lot of roaring. And I have read those poems to lions. And there are films and recordings of those events, which are those events which are seen and heard on occasion. He's talking about that, and he's also speaking of the fact that my frontier, my contribution to the art of poetry, one of my contributions to the art of poetry, is my belief in the mammal and the importance of us all recognizing that we are mammals, that we are first, that we cannot be men unless we are first mammals. We can't just be ideas walking around on stilt legs in cities made of iron and chrome and concrete, but we have to be mammals. And of course one of my favorite mammals is the lion, and I write much poetry about lions. And one of the most illuminating experiences I've ever had was to watch a lion look at its paw, and there was a fly on its paw, and the way the lion looked at that was so beyond our realms of reason and consciousness, and so pure a seeing, that I understood what Blake meant when he said the eye sees more than the heart knows. And based on that, I wrote one poem. I'm going to try and read this. This may not be possible, because I am much older now and I have a much older voice. And I'm not sure if my throat will do it, but I think I'll try. And when I did this with the lions when I was a kid, I shouted it. Today I kind of whisper. But I'll give you an idea. Silence the eyes, becalm the senses, drive drool from the fresh repugnance, thou whole, thou feeling creature. Live not for others, but affect thyself from thy enhanced interior, believing what thou carry, thy trillionic multitude of gra, whooshes and silences. Oh, you are heavier and dimmer than you knew, and more solid and full of pleasure. Gra, gra, gra. Gra, 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 gra. Gra, yeah, gra, gra. My goal in the 60s and today is to convince people, to convince human beings that they're first of all mammals, and not of the junk they carry around them or the things that they value in their one-dimensional lives, but in their deep lives. That I would say is one of the primary motivations behind my writing.
It's deep inside. Your life swinging around your body. Does Mama Lion love you? Does Mama Lion love you? Does Mama Lion love you? and the salmon drown.
I'd been working with Ray Manzarek, and we'd been performing gig after gig after gig and city after, flying from city to city, piano player and a poet, going from club to college to beer hall to coffee house to coffee house. And I came back, and Amy and I decided we need to take a break. So we went to Bali. And then when we were coming back from Bali, which was beautiful, strange, coming back from Bali, we were in a near plane wreck over the China Sea. And it was a tremendously upsetting experience. I was already pretty strained from a couple of years of work with Ray that we'd gone through already. And when I came back, I had a kind of psychophysical meltdown. And I went to the hospital for the first time in my life. I'd never been in a hospital before, but I spent a week in the hospital recovering. And when I got out, I still felt pretty bad. And Amy wanted to help me, and she said, well, you've always said you wanted to start sitting, and now's the time to start. It'll help you get yourself back together more. And I said, oh, no, not me. That's for my friends. I don't do that. I don't want to do that. Hi, Amy. I brought a couple of itinerant filmmakers who are wandering around the neighborhood. I'm not sure what they're doing. They look like foreigners.
I think they're from Amsterdam.
Oh, well, they probably are.
Hello, Alexander. Come in. Hello, Benny. I got Michael into sitting practice when he came home from the hospital. He had been in the hospital for a week, and I said, time to sit. And it occurred to me on one of the trips back home from the hospital, I said, wow, I need a sangha in my life. I need that part of what the Buddhist practice can give an individual is to practice with others, to have a sangha, to have, in that group, one can let go even more of the attachments to the one other. So you can begin to be more liberated and more free. That was my thinking. I just knew I needed to start to sit. I knew I needed to practice to center myself. And I thought it would be great if Michael would do it with me. So I said, let's do it. He said, no, I don't want to do that. My friends have all done that. I've tried that. We don't need to do that. I said, well, you may not need to, but I need to. So we started.
So she put a pillow on the floor, and she sat down on the pillow. My back hurt. I said, my back aches. I got to do something about it. I said, cross your legs, will you? Okay, so she crossed her legs. I said, no, the other one goes on top. And I said, and put your hands together. So she didn't. I said, anyhow, but put them like this. So she did. I said, well, let me show you. So I got a pillow and I sat down too. And we were sitting side by side. And I think we didn't miss sitting for 7 or 8 years after that. The sitting practice changed my poetry in the sense that with two people sitting together with a dyad, that is making a dyad, Amy and I making a sangha, it created a very high field. A field that felt illuminated. Yeah, I think you can hear that in these early Zen poems. And it created an illumined atmosphere. And it didn't, not that it directly affected my poetry, but the sitting affected my person, our person as a single person, and enlarged and enriched it. And during that time, I wrote a book, fairly long, book of 100 poems, or 99 poems, whatever it is, discovering sitting, called Touching the Edge.
So what does the title Touching the Edge mean to you?
Touching the Edge would have multiple, overshadowing moires of meaning to me. Touching the edge of the Tang Dynasty in China, when Zen was formulated out of Taoism and Buddhism. I'd also always been interested in Taoism. Touching the edge that is the edge of the mystery that we must draw all art from by our refusal to partake in the lies around us. Poetry and philosophy should be made the same. That's what I believe. The philosopher, I think, that has meant the most to me in recent years has been Dogen. When I discovered the 14th century visionary Dogen, it was as if I had discovered a figure of importance to me as much as comparable to that of William Blake or to Shelley. All of Dogen that we have today, in the form of the fascicles that he had that were of his speaking that were, or writing that were published, all of it really comes from the other side, and he is dragged into this world by power of imagination and inspiration. I will have a white beard and white mustaches like Manjusri, and a lion's head will hang in the air and float by my shoulder, but that is nothing. It is now or not. My sword will not chop down the fuchsias that the hummingbirds drink from, but only the mind's construct of realms. Nothing to stop me now. It will be this way. It will be that way. We are going to Huckleberry Preserve, which is a preserve for native California plants, which has maintained a forest very much as it was a couple hundred years ago. We go there pretty often. It's my favorite place to walk. And we like to see the seasons change there. There isn't much in the way of seasonal change in California because it's basically wet season and dry season. But the change in the modification of species of plants one into another in the biome over the years is very visible there, where it's less visible in other places where it's been damaged by so many non-native plants. Hunger, hungry, huge, cavernous hole, holding torn beings in transition, lives devouring the path into light of blackness inside of a cricket. A big, shining face with eyes filling the room, roaming without movement, searching for food, arising around, hormones, fats, proteins, wearing emerald genomes in a boiling sea vent. There's a cloud leopard with a baby's face. Mysterioso 3. I take the word Mysterioso, the title, from Thelonious Monk and from his composition, Mysterioso. Mysterioso 3. Hormones. Hormones with lion faces, even with whiskers, maned hormones grinning and swimming as they swim in deltoid shoulder muscles, as our arms beat on high waves. Venus meets soup on a wheel, spinning, splashing out walkers, singers, flyers, tiny eaters. Innocence is driven by lion faces. Dreams being flesh in a universe of wings, realms of glorious sound. Ah, huckleberry. This is the plant part that this is named after. These are fill vast space and covered with tiny, sweet blackberries.
And they're nice to eat.
Oh yeah, they're wonderful, but it takes forever to pick enough to eat. The berry is the size of a very small pea.
Does this place feel like that you can touch the edge here?
Huckleberry Preserve, like any place where you might hear a raven croaking like that, is the edge itself, as any place is the edge. But sometimes it's easy to recognize the edge when it's in the form of nature and relatively untouched hills and trees, and more unspoiled by the social reductionism that's devastated so much else around us. Smile. Smile with the soft edge of the mind. Smile. Smile with the soft edge of the mind. Pliant as the lip of an abalone. Strong as the smallest worm in its harshest and tenderly nourishing realm. No body, no mind. Gone. Gone. I stroke my hands over my chest and your buttocks. We smile inspired by protein pleasure and loveliness so solid, we defeat presence or nothingness. All of me and all of you are this cameo of perfection, with smooth, polished edges. This is really it.